Hello, thanks for tuning in to Best Friends to Similar Interests, where two best friends explain their two dissimilar sets of interests. Each week, one friend introduces the other to a piece of media they have never consumed. They both explore why it's important to them individually, as well as from an overall perspective.
This podcast includes adult language, sensitive subject matter, and general nonsense which may be offensive to some audiences. Everything we say here is an opinion, and any inaccuracies portrayed are not deliberate. Viewer and listener discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to Best Friends to Similar Interests, a podcast where two best friends talk about their interests that they rarely get a chance to consume and talk about. So, my name is Tiberi.
My name is Matt.
And this is a podcast that we've never done before. We have never done podcasting, but we've been best friends for a very long time, and I think this is going to be a learning experience for both of us, but I think it's exciting. So the idea here really is that both of us have had very dissimilar interests for as long as we've known each other. So I'm into a lot of like pop punk music, a lot of anime, a lot of kind of lesser consumed things from Matt's side.
Yeah, and those are things that I don't really interact with. My sister also likes pop punk, so I'm kind of familiar with that stuff, but mostly Fall Out Boy. But yeah, I've never seen any anime. I am a lot more into heavy metal. You know, I listen to different kinds of music, but heavy metal is my wheelhouse. And I'm, really into horror movies, and really just anything that's like really depressing is usually what gets me going.
And I think I've seen maybe 3 horror movies that you'd recommend of like the hundreds you've got for me. So like, I it's gonna be a fun experience because Matt and I have been close for a long time and known each other through most of. I mean, God, we've been friends for I guess 2010. So 14 years now.
Man, we're dating ourselves. We're old.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that.
No, you're fine. I'm just teasing you.
In any case. So this first week, Matt had me listen to an album called Heaven and Hell by Black Sabbath.
And I actually did make him listen to it. I snuck into his house while he was asleep, and I put headphones on his ears. And he woke up to dun 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 dun.
This is true. It's very true.
Oh no, is that the Holy Diver? That's the Holy Diver riff. That's not even on Heaven and Hell. What am I doing?
We're already fucking this up, aren't we?
Yeah.
No, it's fun. No, but yeah. So pretty much every week, the whole format of this show, the idea behind it at least, is we're going to try to show each other media that we've never seen before. So that being said, I don't consume much metal. I don't consume much horror or anything else I haven't consumed. Matt is going to show me and try to explain to me why it's special to him, why he thinks it's a good piece of media. And then after that week, we'll exchange weeks kind of telling each other or sharing with each other, our favorite interests. So I might show him a pop punk album one week. I might show him an anime the next, or a movie the next, and vice versa. But the whole core concept here is that we'll be switching out, kind of showing and watching media with each other, and then kind of coming back the next week and reviewing it, giving our opinions, and just having a general discussion of kind of why it's important, what kind of impact it had on, that scene, on that media's, overarching culture, etc. Just have a conversation as friends, because we've had so many conversations off of recordings that have just been so interesting that I think it's time we just kind of actually sit down and have some focus material and then have that discussion and record it. So maybe somebody out here will like it. Who knows? But if not, this is just a fun passion project.
We had that urge that every millennial man has at some point to subject the world to their opinions and their podcast. But with that, do you feel ready to dive into Heaven and Hell and get some of the history of that album and of Black Sabbath?
Yes, please. Let's hear it. I am vaguely familiar.
Okay. So, Black Sabbath is obviously a very early metal band. Some people would say the first. I would say that they were around at the very beginning, but I wouldn't say they were like the only one. But I am not going to get super into that because this is not about the history of Black Sabbath as much as this is the history of Ozzy leaving Black Sabbath and Dio being introduced into Black Sabbath.
Oh, so I didn't know that Ozzy actually was in the band, left it, and came back.
Yeah, so he was a founding member. They founded in like 1968, I believe. And
Okay.
so their original lineup was Ozzy Osbourne on vocals, Tony Iommi on guitar, Bill Ward on drums, and I love this dude's name, Geezer Butler on bass.
His God-given name is Geezer.
I mean, I think that's his Christian name.
That is a fantastic name. I am not ridiculing him. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I could be wrong. There might be somebody listening right now that's just like, actually, he took that name because of blah, blah, blah. But as far as I know, his parents looked at him when he was a baby, and they said, yeah, that's a geezer right there.
If there's anybody named Geezer listening right now, or maybe one of you, we're sorry. But that is a pretty great name.
Yeah. So that lineup was pretty stable, which is impressive because, I mean, obviously a lot of rock bands, kind of have that revolving door, like, people come and go. But that was a really stable lineup for roughly 10 years and across 8 albums. And,
Okay.
that's extra impressive when you consider that, like, they were, heavily involved in drugs and alcohol. So, like, it was not, a super stable environment.
So Ozzy was in that band. So that band was together with that same lineup for 10 years and 8 albums before Dio even got his hands on it.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
exactly correct.
Okay, interesting.
Huh. So, like, especially the early albums, I'm sure you've heard, like, War Pigs and, like, the big hits like Iron Man.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, very riff heavy, very, like, kind of down-tuned guitars, and, like, that's kind of, like, where that, heavy kind of, like, doom sound came from.
Almost, yeah.
And
What I'm familiar with is, like, this kind of droning sound. It's kind of like, man, it's kind of like this very ominous war sound almost. Like, it's kind of what I describe, what I've heard at least of Black Sabbath.
yeah, and I think that part of that, of like what you're picking up on, is maybe Ozzy Osbourne's voice, which is kind of
Nasally.
kind of droning. Like,
yeah.
there's not like a ton going on melodically usually with Ozzy Osbourne's vocals.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that that's kind of maybe what you're picking up on, and also like they did kind of. When you think about like War Pigs, it does open with like that, like that siren that kind of sounds
That's
like a
right.
drone. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like you're familiar with like the big hits.
Yeah.
So across those albums, people really like basically the first 6,
Okay.
and then after that, people start to kind of fall off on that early Ozzy stuff because they started to kind of abandon the like really kind of doom laden like heavy sound and wanted to experiment more and like wanted to get kind of more progressive really.
Okay.
So by the recording of Technical Ecstasy, which came out in 1976. Ozzy Osbourne was having a lot of mental health issues and was struggling with like substance use problems.
Sure.
So, it got bad enough to where he was like, checked into mental hospitals, and it was just not a good time for him. And he has said that by that point in the band, he was just there to collect a check. Like, he was kind of not interested in Black Sabbath anymore.
Oh, he said that actually.
Yeah, and I think that it's not even, and I mean, obviously I don't know the man's heart or whatever, but like, I imagine that when you're in that kind of mental state, when like you're, it would be easy to lose interest in something that even if you, were like a passionate musician and everything, like it would be hard to be like, okay, I'm going to get up, I'm going to record these songs with my friends. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I know it's a real problem for a lot of people. So yeah, I'm definitely not judging. But
Yeah.
Ozzy is, all the reality shows and crazy things he's done aside, he's a treasure. He's a wild man.
Man, I am going to. Some people might not be happy with the things I have to say about Ozzy Osbourne. And it's not that I dislike him. It's just that like I'm not as excited about his music as a lot of other people who are into heavy metal.
Okay, and hey, that's completely fair. I don't think anybody can fault you for that.
Okay, so Ozzy kind of abruptly left the band in 1977. I think that, like, I mean, I don't know. I don't think there was like a big falling out. I think it was kind of out of the blue, and it was just like, probably something he'd been thinking about, but maybe not shared with the band.
Okay.
So Tony Iommi, the guitarist, he called up his friend Dave Walker to take on vocals. Dave Walker is kind of a guy who was just around a lot in a lot of bands. I don't think he was ever like a founding member of any like band that got really big, but he was the guy that would like, oh, Humble Pie needed somebody. So like, they would get him. He was briefly in Fleetwood Mac. So yeah, so like he kind of all over the place. But unfortunately this did not last long. There is only one recording of Dave Walker performing with Black Sabbath. It was on a British like music, kind of variety show.
Okay.
And they, performed some songs live, and that is the only recording that exists of him with the band.
And so there's no audio tracks of him outside that live show whatsoever.
No. He didn't he did not record like a studio album or anything with them.
Interesting.
So, this didn't last long. Part of it was, and like Dave Walker just kind of sounds like a good guy. I'm not going to lie. I don't know much about him, but apparently he ran into Ozzy at a pub just because he was like, in the area, obviously. Right. And he started talking to him, and Ozzy was just kind of like telling him how he had a change of heart and how he regretted leaving.
Oh, no.
And dude just kind of like stepped aside, and he was like, like, you are the vocalist for Black Sabbath. I am not. So he's like, seems like he was pretty gracious and just was like, I will step aside. You can rejoin.
Oh, that's really nice. Wow.
Yeah. So like, I mean, obviously I wasn't there, but like, that's the vibe I got. I read, a few articles and honestly got some of this just from like Wikipedia.
Sure.
So
we're professionals here.
Yeah. I mean, hey man, when I taught, my students would be like, oh, I don't know where to find sources. And I was like, go to Wikipedia, check their sources. That will give you ideas of where to go from there. Like,
you know what? Wikipedia's a thing. We'll say that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I am definitely not like anti-Wikipedia. But anyway, so Ozzy rejoined in early 1978, and it was actually 3 days before Black Sabbath was set to record their next album.
Wow.
Yeah. So Walker had written a lot of lyrics for the band. In like his brief stint, he wrote like a lot of lyrics for these songs they were planning on recording.
Okay.
And Ozzy just refused to sing them. I guess he was just like, oh, the last guy wrote those? Not for me. This album would become Never Say Die, and part of the album name is an exclamation point at the end. So I think that whenever you say it, you have to be like, never say die.
Yeah.
It took a long time to record that album, and apparently it was just like really arduous and not a fun experience for anybody. They were pretty heavily on cocaine, and everybody was drinking a lot.
Oh, yeah, and a perfect mixture.
Yeah, so, they were mixing uppers and downers. There were apparently many days that they didn't get anything done because, like, from what I read, it was kind of, they would be like, okay, we're going to record. And I think it was probably a little bit of everybody, but it did kind of imply that, Ozzy was the one that a lot of the time was like, we'll do that tomorrow. Okay. So, and then on the days that they did record things, keep in mind they had to write like new songs because Ozzy would not record the songs written with Dave Walker.
That's
So,
that's a lot of work.
yeah, so on the days they did record, they would write the song in the morning and then they would record it at night.
The same fucking day. Also, yeah, this is an explicit podcast. I don't know if I mentioned that in the intro, but yes, expect some cursing. That's kind of crazy.
As I understood it, yeah, the same fucking day they would, write the song. They would, which in one way is impressive that they're like, oh, okay, we wrote this. We're gonna, rehearse it a few times. Let's just turn on some tape.
I guess it's authentic. Yeah, I mean, that must have been really interesting to hear. I wish I were there for that. That's cool.
That being said, Never Say Die was not well received.
Oh, no, Ozzy.
And unlike a lot of their albums so especially their early stuff, kind of the music critics of the day just kind of didn't get it because they were doing their own weird thing. So a lot of those albums, you'll read contemporary reviews that they're just like, well, this kind of sucks. And then they've been now they're classics. So they've been reevaluated. That did not happen to Never Say Die. People are still like, yeah, that album just kind of sucks.
Ooh, that's okay. Hey, there's hits and misses like anything else.
Yeah, but things got worse.
Okay.
After the album's release, they, went on tour to support it. Their opening act was this kind of hot new band from America called Van Halen.
Oh, yeah, I never heard of those guys.
And by all accounts, Van Halen upstaged them every night.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I'm not to be frank, I have not listened to much Van Halen. I've never been a huge fan of them, but perhaps I'm a soothsayer and I just need to listen to more of them. But I understand. Yeah, their popularity is well deserved, and Eddie Van Halen is a damn good guitarist. So
yeah, it's kind of one of those things that I'm not going to say I'm a big Van Halen fan either. Like when I was younger, I used to listen to a lot of them, and I've kind of looking back at it, I'm like, I kind of am not a huge fan of a lot of their stuff.
But it makes sense that they would be so popular at that point in time. That especially if Never Say Die was such a flop.
Yeah, and also they are, even though it's not quite my thing, they are just very talented musicians, like you said, especially Eddie Van Halen. He kind of famously revolutionized the guitar, and he would actually stand backwards, with his back to the crowd, because he was people just started to ape what he was doing. And I guess he kind of felt like, no, that's my style.
Uh-huh.
But that's just how art goes. People are always going to be like, oh, that's sick. Let me try that.
Emulate that, of course.
So, but what I'm getting at is that they were very talented and probably ahead of their time.
And I'm sure so what was Black Sabbath's response to this being upstaged every night?
So I didn't find anything that was they were talking shit about Van Halen or whatever.
Right, no.
But it was very much noted by the press. They were said things like Black Sabbath is Van Halen is opening, they're youthful, they're talented, they're putting on this great show. Sure. Black Sabbath comes out, they're unfocused, they're barely getting through the set because they're
the drugs too, maybe.
Yeah, I was about to say they're coked out of their minds, they're drunk,
Yeah.
So it was not a good tour. If I remember correctly, there was and we can double check this, but there was a night early on when Van Halen covered some Black Sabbath as part of their set.
No.
It was meant to be, and I think it was they were young and they didn't understand that maybe that's not what you do when they're you're opening for that band, because it very much felt like they were
almost.
Yeah, they were thinking oh, we're so excited, we love Black Sabbath, let's play a little bit of Black Sabbath to get the crowd ready for them. But it had to be rough for them to cover Black Sabbath and do a great job, and then Black Sabbath come out and not do that great. So right. that I think was kind of a thing that had to be smoothed over. But besides that, I think that I don't think there was really a lot of animosity between the bands. They probably were just like excited that like Van Halen was at least drawing a crowd.
Yeah.
Because especially in America, people were showing up for Van Halen.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, they're a household name. I mean, most people know who they are. So, but I mean, same with Black Sabbath too. So, it's,
Yeah.
what would you describe? So let me ask you this: what would you describe? And we'll get back more into the history and how this kind of gets into this album, maybe. But, what kind of genre would you describe Black Sabbath as a whole? Because I've never really known what to classify them as a general discography.
So I think especially their early stuff, it's all going to be called heavy metal, but especially their early stuff
Okay.
is the progenitor of a genre called doom metal.
Okay.
That,
like you said, kind of
like
that war sound, the blaring and like the kind of droning. Yeah.
And, just like very heavy, like very kind of dense and just like slow. Like it is not fast music. Like you kind of, I'm not saying that Black Sabbath never did anything fast, but like to be a doom metal band today, you're not going to have fast songs. Like it is by definition a slow genre.
That's so interesting because this album was a little bit of a deviation from that. If I had to put a number on it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's still a Black Sabbath album, but yeah, like I'm gonna get into that. Like, it is a different beast than there's the early Sabbath that is that doomy. Then they had the two albums that they were kind of experimenting, trying to be more progressive, and like maybe not succeeding at.
Sure.
But yeah, so they did start working on another album after the tour with Ozzy. And Ozzy, once again, just showed very little interest in the album and just often refused to sing. So it just was not going well. And it got to the point that Tony Iommi felt that they were either going to break up or they needed to fire Ozzy.
That much of a problem still, huh?
Yeah, and like, I'm sure the writing was on the wall because he had left and then come back, and like it just wasn't going well. They had a bad album, they had a bad tour, they couldn't get anything done. So like at a certain point, I understand. Like even though like I'm sure they were all very close, at a certain point, it's like, this is my career and you are getting in the way of it. Like you're taking the bread out of my mouth,
Yeah, it's like there's respect there, but also it's like, hey, listen, this is like you said, this is my life. Like I'm devoting myself to this, and I it's not fair. I get it. Like it's hard to. I'm sure I hope there wasn't any animosity, amongst them all, but
we'll get into that.
Shit.
So I don't know if I agree with what Tony Iommi did here, but so Ozzy and Bill Ward were really close. Mm-hmm. So Tony Iommi was like, I'm going to make Bill Ward fire him. But
what the fuck? Ozzy.
Yeah, I guess the thinking.
Well, I guess the not Ozzy, Tommy or Tony? Did I say Tommy?
It's Tony Iommi.
Tony, excuse me.
So I guess the thinking was like, it's better to hear it from a friend. He can comfort him. But poor Bill. Bill had to do this. And apparently he got really drunk so that he could get through it.
Oh, Jesus.
And he kind of implied, like I saw a quote where he kind of implied like, I'm not good when I'm drunk. Like,
oh no.
So like, I imagine it was a terrible conversation. Like it probably didn't go well.
Oh no.
So, I didn't find, obviously we can't be a fly on the wall, but things did get ugly after that. So I'm assuming that even from that first point, it maybe wasn't great. The daughter of their manager, Sharon Arden, was
the doctor of their manager?
No, the daughter.
Oh, I was like, how the hell did their doctor get involved?
This was just like Ozzy's psychiatrist. He just goes to Tony. He's like, hey man, the guy's not doing good. You need to get a new singer. So, so the daughter of their manager, Sharon Arden, suggested Dio as a replacement. Dio had recently left Rainbow because that was really Richie Blackmore's band, the guy from Deep Purple. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, so he had been the guitarist of Deep Purple. And that was really his vehicle. Like they were billed as Richie Blackmore's Rainbow. And he wanted to take that band Rainbow in a more commercial kind of pop rock, style. And Dio just wasn't interested, so he left.
Okay.
So Sharon Arden suggested Dio as a replacement. Do you know anyone named Sharon related to Ozzy Osbourne?
Oh, don't you fucking tell me. Don't you fucking tell me. I have to resist the urge to do a goddamn fucking Ozzy impression out of respect for him and for all those who may listen ever in this fucking podcast. I can't do it though. Is it the same Sharon?
It is the same Sharon.
Oh, hell yeah.
Who apparently was just like, she, was around the band a lot. Like, she was really good friends with all of them, apparently. And apparently for a long time, Ozzy had like a really big crush on her. And when I first read that, I was like, oh no, like what's the age difference? But it's like 3 or 4 years. It's not much.
Oh, okay, good.
So it's just that like their manager was old. So anyway, so like they obviously ended up getting together, but at this point they were not. She was just the daughter of their manager who was like, oh, okay, well, I want my dad's band that he's managing to succeed. Like, let's get Dio.
Sure. I mean, hell. So, okay. This is a good point for me to discuss what I know about Dio. Dio is just was a saint on earth. I know he is no longer with us, but from what I understand, from what you've told me, he is was just the nicest guy. But I really don't know much about his history. All I know is that he was in Rainbow, and I didn't even know. So you told me to watch this or listen to this last week, and I didn't even know at that point in time that Dio even sang for Black Sabbath. I only ever thought Ozzy was in Black Sabbath. I had no clue. So I was kind of taken aback. I was like, what do you mean Dio? Like, that doesn't, what? So.
Yeah, he had like a long career up to this point, but Rainbow was definitely the biggest band he had been in. He had started out in like high school playing in bands, playing in like, it was stuff like, Ronnie and the Redcaps, and they would cover like 50s rock and roll. So Dio had a long career, but hadn't really found his niche. Mm-hmm. He kind of did with Rainbow because they were like what I would call like an early like 70s kind of metal band. But I also, if people were like, oh no, they're hard rock, they're not metal, I understand that. But like, I feel comfortable being like, no, they were an early metal band.
Okay.
So they ended up getting Dio, like, she kind of suggested it, and then him and Tony Iommi had a chance meeting at the Rainbow Bar and Grill in L.A. And
any relation to the band?
No. Well, actually, no. I think Rainbow actually was named after that bar. So the Rainbow has been like a big hangout for rock stars for a long time now.
Never knew this.
Like it still is, and some stuff came out recently that is like obviously some bad stuff because like Ron Jeremy hung out there and he would do some really bad stuff there.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so like here recently the name has kind of been tarnished, but for a long time it was just thought of as like this badass bar and grill where like all the rock stars hang out. So like in the 70s and I'm getting off topic here, but like just to kind of set the scene, in the 70s there was a group called the Hollywood Vampires led by Ringo Starr of all people.
What the hell?
And it was just like this group of rock stars and celebrities that would all meet at the Rainbow and just get really fucking drunk. And apparently to join you had to outdrink Ringo, and apparently Ringo could just drink like a fish and just like not be affected. So people would try and join, and then Ringo would just like decimate them. And
Ringo.
Yeah, another like main guy was Alice Cooper.
Okay, yeah.
Who had a lot of like alcohol related problems back in the day. But
Yeah,
anyway,
not to laugh at him, just Alice Cooper. I love Alice Cooper, but
yeah, but I'm getting like way off topic here. So they met at the Rainbow Bar and Grill, and they ended up just like setting up like a jam session basically. In that jam session, they, Tony showed Dio a song he'd been working on that would later become "Children of the Sea," and which is a song that you heard.
Yes.
And by the end of that first like jam session that they did that day, they had that song completed. Like he had abandoned it because it was something he had wrote for that last album that they had planned to do with Ozzy, and it just didn't go anywhere. So he didn't know what to do with the song, but like they worked on it.
And so it's Tony Iommi's song, really.
Yeah. Well, he wrote the music. Dio wrote the lyrics.
Okay.
And that's kind of how that Heaven and Hell was written. Like, and I'll get into all that in a minute, but like, so like Dio always kind of wrote all of his own lyrics, and in his solo project became, I think, a lot more involved with like writing the actual music. Okay. But obviously in Rainbow, like Richie Blackmore kind of took that role in Black Sabbath. Tony Iommi. Tiny Iommi. That's what he calls his son. But yeah, he kind of took that role because it was kind of his band. So then when Dio went solo, that's when he was kind of like, I'm going to write more of the music.
Okay.
And I don't know if I've even said this, but his full name is Ronnie James Dio.
Oh yeah, I knew that much. I'm not that far removed from metal, but no, Dio is a legend. That's it. I have to be somewhat familiar with him, or else I can't call myself a fan of any kind of music, really.
Yeah, but so Dio ended up joining Black Sabbath. Like that went so well, and they worked so well together that they like made an official like, will you join? And he's like, yeah. And apparently he just like instantly revitalized the band. Like they instantly were a lot more focused, and they were excited. Okay. And I found this quote by Tony Iommi that I thought was really kind of an interesting insight into the differences between like Ozzy Sabbath and Dio Sabbath.
Okay.
They were totally different altogether, not only voice-wise, but attitude-wise. Ozzy was a great showman, but when Dio came in, it was a different attitude, a different voice, and a different musical approach as far as vocals. Dio would sing across the riff, whereas Ozzy would follow the riff like in Iron Man. Ronnie came in and gave us another angle on writing.
That's so true, actually. Having listened to this album and thinking of like Iron Man as an example, like that's actually a very good point. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so that kind of made me remember something I learned in music appreciation class when I was in community college. And I was trying to Google the exact terms because I know there are terms for like what he's describing. And I know so little about like the technical side of music that I was like, oh God, I don't even know what to Google. If I understand it correctly, what Ozzy would do is called monophonic, and what Dio would do is called polyphonic.
Polyphonic, right? Okay. So, and I guess you could say like singing over, having your own melody across the other melody, where there's two melodies kind of layering, and like going back, like you said, like Iron Man, where it's all like the same. It follows the riff. It follows the same kind of structure, so to speak. So
yeah. And if I'm not using those terms correctly, hopefully somebody will be like, "You absolute idiot! Let me tell you about my music degree."
Don't worry. If anybody does listen to this podcast, they will. The only feedback we'll get is that we're idiots, and I want to be the first to acknowledge we are. You're right. So bring it on.
So at first, Iommi and Dio wanted to form a new band, just completely independent of Black Sabbath. They wanted like the Ozzy stuff to be Black Sabbath. Mm-hmm. They wanted the Dio stuff to be, just a new band, a new name. Even though it was just the one person had changed, they wanted to do that.
That much of a change in their eyes to warrant a new project. I mean, I get that. Like if your quote unquote front man leaves, like what do you do? I mean, like, yeah, it's essentially what happened with, if I'm not mistaken, it's essentially what happened with Guns N' Roses back in like the 80s and 90s. They just, after they broke up, I think Duff and Slash went with Scott Weiland to make Velvet Revolver, and I think they had a fair amount of success. They were a pretty good band. So
Yeah. So I definitely get that. When I was reading about why they kept the name Black Sabbath, I think, they kind of decided to keep the name. And here's a quote that kind of, I think, Dio explains a little bit why they kept the name. So Dio said, Sabbath was a band that was floundering. And with my inclusion in it, we pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps, cared a lot about each other, and knew that we could do it again, especially under the banner of a band that had been so successful. So it was kind of like, like we can, okay, we've kind of lost our way, but we can do this again. We can be Black Sabbath. And also there's like the reason of like, that's a recognizable name. Like, why would you throw that away?
Like,
everybody knows who Black Sabbath is.
They're fucking headliners. They're going to get all the same crowds they got before, and Dio will just draw more too. But again, what a sweet thing of Dio. Everything I hear about Dio is just so positive, uplifting. I'm just waiting for, I thought just before off the microphone, I'm just waiting for the fucking day that it's like, Dio, he punched a cop right in the face. And I'm like, oh no, not Dio.
You say that like that's a bad thing. I would be so excited if Dio punched a cop. I'm going to get a tattoo of Dio punching a cop.
Oh no. Oh, the one cop listening to us right now is like, those idiots. I remember that day he punched me.
Yeah, he's like, Dio. But yeah, I also thought that was very sweet that he included the line, we cared a lot about each other. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, so just getting a little bit into the actual album that they recorded, it really completely changed the sound of Black Sabbath. And we've talked a little bit about kind of, the eras that Black Sabbath can be broken up into up to this point. And, like this is a very different beast than anything they had done before.
So how many albums was Dio on? Obviously this one. Was he on any others?
Yeah, so he was on this one. He was on their next one, which was called Mob Rules. And he was on a live album that they put out called Live Evil.
Yeah,
we will get
into that.
Yeah, we will get into kind of what happened there because he ended up leaving the band after that. They did kind of reform with Dio in the 90s, and they put out an album called Dehumanizer.
Okay.
And then in the 2000s, because that was the only album that they put out together for that stint, then in the 2000s, they were, Ozzy was with the band again. But they wanted to put out another album with Dio. So they finally did the thing that they talked about where they just formed a new band and they called it Heaven and Hell. That was the name of the band.
Oh my God. You just unlocked something for me. I remember hearing about this and I never understood why Ozzy was on a project called Heaven and Hell. I was like, what is this? That makes so much more sense. And you said Ozzy was part of this, right?
No. So Ozzy was with Black Sabbath at the point. They wanted to put out an album with Dio. Ozzy did not. But
I misunderstood. Okay.
Yeah, like Tony Iommi and everybody else wanted to. So they formed a new band called Heaven and Hell, and they put out an album called The Devil You Know, which I think is a funny name because it's like, it's like wink, wink. We're Black Sabbath, but we can't say that.
We're still here, motherfuckers. Yeah.
But yeah, so it really changed the sound of Sabbath, and in my opinion, it heralded the coming of like 80s heavy metal. But yeah, many people did not like the sound, like the new sound, because they were like,
of the album Heaven and Hell.
Yeah, so like a lot of Sabbath, like old school Sabbath fans, did not like it.
Interesting. I wonder why.
It was just such a departure, and like I think some people like probably just felt loyal to Ozzy. They're like, no, he is Black Sabbath.
Okay. Yeah.
Kind of touching on that. Dio's wife, her name was Wendy Dio. Actually, it still is. I'm pretty sure she's still alive. She has claimed that Dio was spat on by fans during the earliest shows he did with Black Sabbath, and that people would spit on him. People would like bring signs that would say like, "Where's Ozzy?" and like, "This isn't Sabbath," and just like be pretty cruel. And Dio, by all accounts, was just a professional, and he's like, "No, motherfuckers, I'm gonna like belt my heart out and like show you."
Hell yeah. Kill him with love.
And like there's kind of this narrative that like people really came around. Like by the end of like that first tour, people were like, "Okay, this guy actually is really good."
Well, good. That makes me excited. I mean, I get it though. If you're so used to a sound, like, I have the opinion too when it comes to bands. Like, yeah, you always want to have that kind of evolution, right? But at the same point, it's always hard with some of my favorite bands. You always want to love what you know, but also encourage them to grow, right? So I get it.
Yeah, and there's some bands that I love because they have like kind of stayed the same for 30 and 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
But there are other bands that I love because like you never know what you're gonna get, so but yeah, I get that. I definitely understand the urge to be like, oh, I'm loyal to Ozzy, because like especially when I was younger, I was just like, fuck Ozzy, I like Dio. So like I kind of get the like sports team mentality of like, oh, I'm on this team and like that other team is different. But yeah, like I was saying, not everybody loved the new sound. One of those people was drummer Bill Ward. He did not like the direction that the band was going.
Oh.
And also, keep in mind that like him and Ozzy were really good friends. They were really close.
Yeah,
and
maybe he had some of that loyalty effect as well, of course. Okay.
Yeah, he did say that like he would be up there drumming and he just kind of felt like, what am I doing? Like, this isn't my band anymore. Like this is, I don't really know this guy. And like, he probably just felt like he was betraying Ozzy. And like I said, they were really good friends. So,
yeah.
But anyway, he ended up leaving the band during the Heaven and Hell tour. And, like just pretty abruptly, as I understand it.
Oh, wow.
And they had to scramble to find a new drummer.
Okay.
Dio suggested Vinny Appice, I think is how you say his name.
Not familiar.
Yeah, well, so his kind of claim to fame is literally he became Dio's longtime drummer. He was pretty unknown at the time. His older brother was Carmen Appice, who was a much like bigger name. He was a founding member of Vanilla Fudge. If you've ever
Vanilla Fudge, the fuck is this shit?
Yeah, so they were kind of another kind of early, I don't know if I'd call them like an early metal band, but just like a very kind of fuzzy like rock band, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
So Appice was unknown at the time. He had done some like uncredited work with John Lennon, actually.
What the fuck? Ringo and Lennon are both in this story?
Yeah, the Beatles are just everywhere. But it was one of those things that like I think John Lennon just kind of like heard his little like local band in New York and was just like, they're really good. I should like get them to be my studio musician sometime. So he actually did like some of the last recordings that John Lennon did before he was shot. Vinny Appice was on.
Oh wow. Okay, that's actually quite interesting.
Yeah,
huh.
But he like was in no way a household name. I don't even know how Dio had heard of him.
Sure.
But Dio was like, we got to get this kid. Like, he's something special.
Okay.
Ozzy leaving the band or, being fired from the band kind of heralded the end of Black Sabbath having a stable lineup. They became that like revolving door band where Tony Iommi was the only person who was consistent.
Huh. So Tony Iommi saw it all the way through to present day for Black Sabbath.
Well, they're no long like they disbanded a few years back.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, Tony Iommi was the only person who was like consistently like always in the band.
Huh.
So Bill Ward would return after Dio and Appice's departure. But he left again after a couple albums.
Okay.
And Geezer Butler left with him that second time.
Okay. So it was just Tony and Ozzy and then a revolving door.
Well, it wasn't even Ozzy. Ozzy didn't come back.
So after so is there a third singer for Black Sabbath?
Yeah, there's like 3, 4, 5.
Oh wow. Okay. So, see, now when it gets that far, I can kind of be like, okay, yeah, maybe this isn't the same band anymore.
Yeah, I definitely get that. It's like when people go and see Leonard Skinner. I'm like, I don't think there's many people still in Leonard Skinner that were there originally, you know?
Yeah, that was sad.
Yeah. But yeah, so it kind of became like a revolving door of musicians. Ozzy would end up rejoining Black Sabbath, but like before that happened, they had, other singers.
Okay. Huh.
The Dio era of Black Sabbath would end after the recording of Live Evil, that live double album that we were talking about.
Yes.
Dio felt that him and Appice were not being treated as like full members of the band. He kind of felt like they were being treated as session musicians,
like stand-ins okay.
Yeah, and a big part of that was he wanted more control over how his vocals were mixed on that album.
Mm-hmm.
And so he would like go and talk to the mix tech or whatever. And then, people like Tony Iommi would come behind him and be like, no, do it this way. And like they started butting heads a lot over that. And then there was some more kind of like, kind of petty stuff where it was like, you look at the gatefold of that album and there's a bunch of pictures of like Tony Iommi and like Geezer Butler. But then there's like very little representation of Dio or Vinny Appice. And that was another thing that he was just like, felt like, you all are not treating us as full members of this band.
Yeah, it's just kind of like you said, they're not getting the full benefits of the whole being a star band thing. Which, yeah,
Yeah, and like I said, like it might have been petty. I wasn't there. I don't know if like any of this was true.
Sure.
Geezer Butler, so kind of the final straws was Geezer Butler accused Dio and Appice of secretly recording a solo album. And, they would end up recording a solo album later. I don't know if there was any overlap.
I was going to say, but was he right though? Was he fucking right?
I don't know. I don't know if like they'd start writing. I just don't know. They might have. I don't know. Maybe they saw the writing on the wall and they're like, yeah, we should start working on our own thing.
Things happen. Creative projects don't always last.
So the thing that was like the actual final straw was the mix tech of Live Evil so the word that was used in the articles I found was that he misinformed Geezer Butler and Tiny, I keep saying that, and Tony Iommi that Dio had snuck into the studio in the dead of the night to turn up his vocals in the mix. I don't know if he truly believed that or if it was just a lie because he was like butting heads with Dio and he might have just been like, fuck this guy, I'm going to say this.
Motherfucker, if Dio did that shit, I'm going to be so upset.
He like unequivocally did not from everything that I saw.
Okay.
Okay. Because like I said, the word that was used was misinformed. So I don't know if that was I don't know if that was a lie that he knew he was lying or if he believed it. Like maybe there was something weird in the mix and he's like, I didn't do that. I bet Dio did it. Like, I don't know.
I gotcha.
But apparently it was not true.
Okay.
So anyway, it like became a big thing, and they basically kind of, I don't want to say broke up because like they were still a band, Black Sabbath was, but like Dio and Appice left. Appice became Dio's like longtime drummer in like his solo projects, and also whenever he would rejoin Black Sabbath, he would bring Appice with him.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and so then I just have some information about Dehumanizer and The Devil You Know, but we already touched on that.
Sure.
The last thing that I have before I get into just kind of my personal connection is what I have labeled the Dio Ozzy drama.
I am enraptured by this. What the fuck is the Dio Ozzy drama?
So they had a feud for literal decades, and like Dio died, and they still just did not like each other.
Oh no.
So Ozzy apparently started, like, so he didn't really take being fired well, and then he didn't take Dio being hired well.
Sure.
And he apparently was giving a lot of interviews where he was just saying some, like, really kind of nasty things about everybody in the band and kind of calling out Dio and, like, oh, that's not Sabbath. He's not Sabbath. Like, you know. And, like, I think I couldn't find the quotes that Dio was specifically, you know, like, responding to in this quote I'm going to read you.
Mm-hmm.
But just knowing how nasty it got and like how mean some of the things Ozzy did was, and like things that him and Sharon said about Dio, I imagine that it out of the gate was probably pretty nasty. But Ozzy would do things like, so Dio was obviously a very small man. He was like 5'2", and you know, was not a conventionally handsome man.
Don't you fucking say that.
Yeah.
Don't you fucking say that.
So Ozzy did things like he hired a little person for his tour that he would kind of parade around the stage. He named the character, I guess you would say, Ronnie. And he would mock execute this little person on stage.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, Ozzy.
Yeah, so it's not a good look.
Ozzy.
But I have this really great quote from Dio, where he was, you know, apparently, like I said, apparently Ozzy had like been given interviews early on in magazines and like, you know, talking shit. So Dio, in this interview who's giving for a radio station, he said, replying to the things Ozzy has said in magazines, to me is like dueling with an unarmed man. So he like kind of said like, look, I'm not gonna stoop to that level, but like he got his shot in. Like he kind of said like, you know, he's like, you know, I'm gonna get my little shot in. Let him
have his little expressionism, and then I'll let it go. Like whatever. Like
what? So after Dio said that, what do you think he did next?
Ozzy or Dio?
Dio.
I'm hoping he didn't hire a little person and call him Little O.
He did not do that, but he did proceed to just fucking tear Ozzy to shreds in this interview.
Oh, hell yeah. Let's hear it.
So after he said that about, you know, dueling with an unarmed man, he goes, it really is. I really feel like someone who has a sword up against someone who just has no clue what a weapon is. I find the man to be stupid, totally devoid of intelligence, an animal, and I could give you examples of all these things to back up what I'm saying.
You just fucking called him an animal? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. I mean, in all fairness, he bit the head off of a bat on stage. That is kind of animalistic behavior.
Yeah, that I hate that more than anything. Yeah, it sucks, but
yeah. But he continued. I would not say them unless I firmly believed these things, and I wouldn't say them unless I felt that at some point someone need reply to moronic statements that Ozzy has made about people who, let's face it, made him all the money in the world. It wasn't Ozzy Osbourne who wrote any more than perhaps 2 of the songs that Black Sabbath have ever recorded. Geezer Butler wrote all the lyrics to the songs that have been hits: War Pigs, Paranoid, right down the line, Iron Man, but yet Ozzy claims to have written those songs. Not only does he claim at this point to have written the lyrics, he claims to have written the music.
Man, that's fucked.
Yeah, I think it's very funny that he was like, look, I'm not going to stoop to that level, and then he just fucking tore him to shreds anyway.
I'm not going to stoop to that level, but also he's a fucking terrible musician. It's like, well, all right, Dio, if you say so. I mean, God, clearly a man of your word.
So it is disputed how much Ozzy ever wrote for Black Sabbath. It does, seem like Iommi wrote the vast majority of the music, and it does seem like Butler wrote most of the lyrics. Butler once said, and I don't know if this was a joke or if he was being serious, but he did say, Ozzy can't even read. How could he write a song? So
Ozzy can't even read. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, God.
So they're kind of just shitting on Ozzy, but also he kind of deserves it. Dude's kind of a terrorist.
I mean, yeah, yeah. That's all I can say.
The escalation, this escalated for decades. Ozzy claims to have never even listened to any of the Dio-led Black Sabbath albums. He refused to sing any of the Dio songs live. Keep in mind, when Dio was with the band, he sang the Ozzy stuff because he knew that's what the crowd wanted.
Yeah.
So, like, he sang his own stuff. He sang the Ozzy stuff. My speculation as far as why Ozzy wouldn't sing the Dio stuff is partly, like, it's probably partly pride. Like, he's like, oh, I don't want to. It's the same thing he did with the other guy. I also think he knew he couldn't do it.
Okay. So in a minute, when I get into kind of my breakdown opinions of all the songs I listened to, I'm going to go ahead and say now, I think Dio is a technically and creatively much better singer than Ozzy. And I'm sorry, Ozzy. I'm sorry. I love you, and you have your place, and I think you're a great musician. But yeah, man, Dio is just rad.
Yeah, so that's, and that's just speculation on my part, but I do truly believe that, like, if Ozzy had tried that, it would have been deeply embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, just, and again, maybe that's just me being facetious. Their voices truly are just so dissimilar that it'd be so hard, I think.
Yeah, like, when Dio would do the Ozzy stuff with Black Sabbath, he didn't really try and imitate, like, Ozzy's voice.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of did more of a growling, like, like not like a death growl, obviously, but he would kind of, like, lower his, like, the register he was singing in and just kind of, like, do that, like, monotone thing.
Yeah.
Not all the time, like, he would still do his own stuff, like, there are some songs that he was still just like, well, I'm going to make it my own. But yeah, so he refused to sing the Dio songs. During the Dehumanizer tour with Black Sabbath, so that was the 90s album that they did with Dio. There were a couple of shows where Black Sabbath was scheduled to open for Ozzy Osbourne. Dio refused. He would not open for Ozzy.
Oh, boy.
So, and, like, once again, I know that I'm, like, a big Dio guy, so, like, I have my slant, but I don't blame him. Like, after the things that him and Sharon had, like, said and done, like, I wouldn't open for him either.
It's a little hard to break and it sucks for all the fans. It sucks for all of his, loyal followers and even his bandmates. I'm sure they may have been pretty excited to actually do this, but yeah, you're right too. Where it's just kind of like, how do you put all that history behind you? I don't know.
Yeah. Fear not. Those fans still got a fantastic show because you know who they got to replace Dio for those shows?
Eddie Van Halen.
No, Rob fucking Halford of Judas Priest.
Oh, shit.
So with Dio's blessing, Rob Halford did those shows. And
they were rad to see.
Yeah, it's crazy to see it because it's just Rob Halford, like, belting out Black Sabbath songs.
That's another band I haven't listened to much of. So we'll see where that goes.
You will.
Oh,
you
fuck.
will.
Oh, fuck.
But yeah, so that's kind of all the notes I have on, like, the history. I think I've kind of run over what we were shooting for.
Okay, yeah.
But as far as my personal connection of, like, how I discovered this album and, like, all that stuff, it's kind of lame, honestly. But, I was, like, 13, 14. I was a huge classic rock fan at the time, and I still am. But, I'd kind of always heard of Black Sabbath, but I'd never given them a chance. I'd never listened to them. Mm-hmm. So my dumb ass was like, I'll go into iTunes and I'll search Black Sabbath I'll see what is up. So don't ask me why I did it this way, but for whatever reason, none of the Ozzy stuff was on iTunes at the time. So it was just pure happenstance that all the top tracks were from Heaven and Hell.
Interesting.
And so I just, like, listened to the 30-second
snippets. Oh my god! Do you know how much music I discovered doing that back in the day? That's such a without giving away our age. That is such a, like, unique to our generation, where it's just like we sit down and those 30-second clips are like, yeah, that's the stuff I'm looking for, or nah, this sucks.
Yeah. So I listened to the 30-second snippets. I very distinctly remember, I don't know why this was the first one I listened to, but I do distinctly remember the first one I listened to was Lady Evil. And I was just like blown away by his vocals on that song, and like the vocals are still just so impressive.
I've got some fun notes on that one. That was an interesting one to me.
Well, you know what? Let's transition over to what you thought then. I do have the lyrics for all the songs pulled up in case you reference anything like that.
Yeah, okay. So first of all, thank you for the very excellently thorough history there. I learned a lot tonight. A lot again. It's so funny because when you see Black again, I think I mentioned to somebody else too. I was listening to Black Sabbath this week, and they were just like, "Oh yeah, Ozzy, right?" And I was like, "No. I had the same reaction, but no." This was kind of a fun ride for me. Now, so I guess it's hard for me to again put this into a genre. So you said that overall it's kind of like Black Sabbath is kind of a doom metal band. It's kind of the term you used, right?
So like early Sabbath would be the progenitors of doom metal. So like their first 4 albums, really.
Mm-hmm.
What you heard, like Heaven and Hell, would just be called straight heavy metal, like Iron Maiden.
So you would actually call this heavy metal?
Yeah. This is
interesting.
Like I said, like I think that this was kind of a big progenitor of, and I'm not even saying that like, oh, they did it first and everybody was like copying them. I just think it's an early example of what 80s metal was going to look like. Like, you know, you can kind of hear.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that. I've got some notes on that explicitly. But you were saying?
Oh, no, just like, you know, kind of 80s mainstream metal. Like you can kind of hear, and like it's still a Sabbath album. Like it's still like those big Tony Iommi riffs.
Right.
But like with the vocals, you can kind of hear why, like I said, like Iron Maiden or any of those like kind of operatic vocals that were big in the 80s.
That is exactly. So Iron Maiden was one I had on my little list here to compare them to. And I've got some other bands, and we'll go track by track here. And I think it's going to be a pretty interesting point. But Iron Maiden, I definitely got the vibe from on this. And so yeah. So I guess without further ado, if you're okay with it, I'll just start going through here from the first track to the last and kind of explaining what I've listened to, going over a few of the lyrics, and then kind of just, giving my opinions and thoughts on the whole thing, and maybe see if I can glean some more information from some of these songs. Because I think some of them I have a pretty clear idea of what was the message and kind of the vibe, but others I'm like, I think I get it, but maybe not. So
yeah.
So okay, I guess I'll just start with track 1 here. I guess. All right. Okay. So getting into it here, Heaven and Hell, Black Sabbath. I guess we'll talk about the album art first. So the front cover is just 3 angels sitting and smoking cigarettes. One of them's got a deck of cards. It's chill. I like it. It's just very simple. Nothing super flourishy. It's just well illustrated. And I think it's just a nice little, like, piece of art. Nothing that it doesn't need to be overstated. I think it's just a nice piece. I think that partially alludes to the title track, which we'll get to later. But back of the album, I actually just saw right before we recorded, but it's got this kind of pencil sketch of all of them, and it's just really well done. It's just a really kind of like almost playful kind of like drawing of them. It's like you could tell they're serious, but they're having fun, which is good to see. Like you said, especially Dio looks very very mischievous, very playful on the right.
Yeah. Yeah. I always thought it looked like he was trying to be really mysterious. I should have looked this up because a suspicion I have is that back cover was probably done by the same person who did the cover for a Rainbow album called Long Live Rock and Roll. And because it's very much like a very similar like pencil like sketch drawing of that band.
Huh.
And it's really similar. So I have a sneaking suspicion that that might have been the same artist.
That's a whole nother podcast. I could fucking talk about album art for, excuse me, hours and hours. There's some good shit out there as far as album art. So, okay, getting back to the actual tracks here though. So we'll start off here and walk through it. Number 1, fucking Neon Nights. Man, this is a really fun song, and I think it sets kind of the tone for a lot of this album. It's immediately it's just kind of very chugging, upbeat, and like Dio is just kind of like wailing over this like really nice chugging beat. And so it's this really kind of cool dichotomy in the lyrics of like modern imagery and then like fantasy, like medieval imagery. I think that's going to be a recurring theme I talk about on this. Is Dio is so good at like almost storytelling in his lyrics, where it's just so like playful and whimsy. Is that a fair assumption of me?
Yeah, no, like there were definitely some motifs and things that Dio would return to again and again, like any other writer. But yeah, like kind of this medieval fantasy kind of imagery was used a lot. I'm just looking at the lyrics now. And like circles and rings, dragons and kings, weaving a charm and a spell.
Yeah.
Blessed by the night, holy and bright, called by the toll of the bell. Like,
it's
damn,
rad.
that's badass as hell.
It's rad as hell, yeah. So again, like the lyrics are so cool. It's like ride out, protectors of the realm, captains at the helm, sail across the sea of light. Yeah, it's like there's such good imagery, and then there's such like unique phrases. It's like time again to save us from the jackals of the street. I love that. It's just so like over the top, but not in like an annoying way. It's self-aware, it seems, but still leans real hard into it. It's kind of my feedback. Like sonically speaking, all just really good stuff. I really enjoyed this as an opener. Like I said, it kind of set the tone for me, I thought, pretty well. I think instrumentally, just really good. And it definitely, with the chugging and like all that stuff, sounds a little bit more like what I would expect from like overall, like Black Sabbath, or like you said, even more like an Iron Maiden noise. But yeah, overall,
Yeah.
Track 1, fun. As far as meaning, is it kind of referring to like cops and like EMTs and like all these people who like work these like super intense jobs, like, and comparing them to like medieval knights and like they're these like glorified heroes?
So that's not something I've ever gotten out of it, but
Okay.
that is the beautiful thing about Dio lyrics is like, okay, so sometimes he straight up just says like what he's talking about, but
Yeah.
pretty often, like a way that I've seen it described is he like layers metaphors on top of each other
Sure.
so that you can then like draw meaning from that. And to me, like, yeah, I think that's a perfectly valid reading.
Mhm.
But like I think it's like a lot of Dio songs, you could go a lot of different ways with it.
Sure.
And yeah, like you know, I'm just looking at the lyrics here and it's like they're kind of, it's like really specific phrases that are used in this kind of vague way so that you can like draw your own meanings out of it. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, I think I see what you're getting at, where it's just like sea of lights, like all this stuff could mean anything. And they're talking about like buildings, cars, stars, like it could be anything. But I guess what I'm getting at is like, and maybe this is a side effect, just kind of like listening and analyzing it, but I definitely got a lot of like vivid imagery while listening to this album. But like you said, so let me ask you, so what is kind of the meaning you drew from this song?
So to me, like, so I'm specifically thinking about this like little section.
Mhm.
Bloodied angels fast ascending, moving on a never bending light, phantom figures free forever, out of shadows shining ever bright.
Okay.
So like when I read something like that, to me it makes me think of like modernity and like how we, like there are all these city lights and everything,
Mhm.
but maybe we've kind of lost some of our humanity in that. So like we are the bloodied angels, and we're like falling from maybe a more pure or like, natural position.
Mhm.
And even though like we have all these possibilities to like, sail across this sea of lights, it's maybe taking us farther away from
Okay.
what we, maybe should be doing.
Yeah.
And then like to me the neon nights are like the possibility of like, okay, but we still could like live in this new world and still have like the beauty of like, the world that maybe we're losing. That's what
I kind of got it. I got a note here. I just have like a call to arms almost, where it's like, let's do this shit. Like, I see what you're kind of getting at. It's, yeah, I think that makes sense what you said. Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what I get out of it. But like I said, like many Dio songs, like the only one I can think of on this album that he just straight up is like saying what he means is "Walk Away," because it's just a very kind of simple, thing.
Yeah.
And so many of them are like I said, kind of using metaphor after metaphor after metaphor to kind of construct meaning. And like when
Sure.
you do that, you really open yourself up to all different kinds of interpretations.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, I really like the song. Like I said, it was definitely a good first impression, and I think that, like you said, that Dio voice, just that like that, just that vibrato, that power of just like holding that like note or that enunciation is just such a good, like, energizing thing he does, and it's. I love it as a signature explicitly to him, of course, but it's something I do love that he does. Just very, like you said, operatic is the exact word I would use. And it works really well.
Yeah, and so Dio never had any like voice training. Yeah, which is like kind of surprising when you hear him, but he did like when he was younger. He was like in band in high school and he played woodwind instruments.
Hell yeah,
And
clarinet represent.
Yeah. So he kind of self-ascribed his like vocal style and his ability to, hold these notes and like get so much power out of his voice because of the breathing techniques that he learned to play woodwind instruments. So like while he was singing, he would be doing circular breathing.
That is so interesting. Huh. But I mean, yeah, no, it's funny because I mean the voice is an instrument like anything else, I guess, and it's air. So I suppose it makes sense. Cool. Well, I guess anything else on this one before I move on to
No. If
track
that's
2
everything
here?
you wanted to say, we can move on to Children of the Sea.
All right, track 2. Children of the Sea. Man, this feels very, very 80s. Almost it's this very just like kind of opens with this very kind of soft like acoustic guitar or mandolin. I can't really tell which one. But it's this very vivid imagery of, again, the sea. In the misty morning, on the edge of time, we've lost the rising sun, a final sign. So it's this really kind of soft, just kind of like pretty ass song. And then when verse 1 hits, it just gets really hard. Now, this is something that I love, is how they have a song and it's structured with different levels of energy between choruses and verses. It's such a good segue into songs. Like, so as soon as verse 1 goes into the chorus, where he's like, oh, they say that it's over, and he says, and it just had to be, the way he holds that B on that line, where it just holds it, and it's so good sounding. And it just, like I said, it continues. That's such another motif of this album I'm seeing, is just like building throughout the song. And it's like almost like some of these songs rise and fall pretty like frequently to kind of set a mood, which I love. Like I said, it's a very like guttural singing. Now, on this song explicitly, I don't know if what am I a sucker for, Matt? What is something I've told you I am a damn sucker for when it comes to instruments and
I
music?
don't know right off. What are you a sucker for?
I am a sucker for some damn good bass. And holy shit,
yeah.
this guy. Okay, so who is the bassist for this?
It's our boy Geezer Butler.
Geezer Butler can fucking groove, man. I was blown away. Most of these songs, like I'm sitting there listening, like I'm liking Dio's voice. I'm loving the guitar and fucking that bass. Where the playing there is so good, and it's just such a unique. It's a sound I love is when they actually utilize the higher octaves and the higher registers of the bass, and they actually layer that with the guitar. It almost felt like for a lot of this album, the bass and the guitar kind of switched backing each other and soloing, which I loved.
I do have a little bit I could say about the kind of the recording of the bass for this album.
Yeah.
Well, first off, I did want to say, like, yeah, you're right. Like, every time I listen to this album, like, obviously Black Sabbath is like a huge name. But whenever I listen to this album in particular, I'm like, God damn, they can play. Like, they are just so good.
Like,
but, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, we're only 2 songs into this, and shit, I'm like, wow, okay, I'm in for a treat.
Yeah. But, so, you know, during the recording of this album, Geezer Butler was, like, not having a good time. If I remember correctly, both of his parents had died, like, in pretty quick succession, and he was going through a divorce. So, like, he was just not having a good time. He kind of had to step away from the recording of this album to, like, take care of personal issues. So they, you know, Dio had played bass in Elf, so he was a bassist. So he stepped up and played in, like, when they were kind of writing and getting stuff together, he, like, you know, would play bass for the songs when they were jamming.
Yeah.
And then they ended up getting a session musician to record the bass for the album. But Geezer Butler came back, and, you know, like, he kind of got his house in order, hopefully.
Yeah.
And he came back, and he was kind of like, you know, no offense, you know, this guy did a great job, but, like, let me show you how to throw it down.
Oh shit.
So he like re-recorded all the bass.
Oh shit.
For the album. So, like, the bass playing you're hearing is Geezer Butler.
Oh great. Well, Geezer, if you're still with us, I don't know your history or where you are, if you are listening. Man, great fucking job. That was wonderful. Like I said, like you said too, they're all so talented as musicians on this album, and all of Dio's lyricism aside, and all of the actual writing aside, this is such an interesting song. Now they do this really cool shit in this song, right? So we get through a couple get a verse. There's some cool ass lines like "We made the mountain shake with laughter as we played," and it's like. That is again, it's so like sprawling in scale. I noticed what Dio does, where he's just like, I will literally like destroy part of the world for one line on this song, and it's like, yeah, okay, I'm into that, because again, it just really makes it feel like everything he's saying and the way he's singing it is so like powerful, and it's almost like. I was a big fan of this song. I really quite liked it. Now, so something else, and we'll get through to this maybe a little bit more. We'll come back to this one line here. Don't maybe forget when I'm done with this song. I want to ask you what the demon dance is, and what that is really implying, and like that we threw away the key and locked the door. So I want to come back to that. But before we get to that, I just want to say there is a badass solo in this song. So it's the guitar solo that has this kind of like vocal harmony chanting almost in the background. And then the guitar is just like ripping over it. And it's
I love that part.
It's so good. And it kind of just fade that into the chanting. And then it goes right back to the chill, kind of acoustic-y intro. and then he repeats the bridge, and it goes back in to the chorus, and then in that chorus specifically, the one right before the last outro kind of ish verse, he there's one line where he says, "Oh, they say that it's over." The last time he says that, he fucking belts it, and it's sick. And I'm getting emphatic here. I'm giving it a lot of praise because, frankly, I really enjoyed it. Then we get to the outro. I love this. Feels so like, that's where I describe as like playful, where it's like, look out, and it's like, oh Jesus, like, again, very like storyteller is the way I kind of felt. And I was just like, I can visualize him like in front of a crowd, like doing hand gestures and like putting his arms out and like warning everybody. And it's like, oh, it feels so like it's a warning, and it's directed to the audience, which I think is really interesting. And I have a note here on the very last line: the sun's going black, and then it's never coming back. Look out. And then I have a note here: we fucked up the sun. So I'm assuming this is kind of like is this like a pro like environment song?
I mean, it definitely could be. Like, once again, I think that there are so many readings of Dio's lyrics that are completely valid. What I kind of get it out of it is like, it's just more, to me, it's more of a straight up story about kind of a fall from grace,
Okay.
where it's like, they're the children of the sea, like, they're, very kind of pure, and like you were saying, like, I love the lines, we sailed across the air before we learned to fly, we thought that it could never end. So it's like, okay, they're like, once again, in this state of like, natural bliss.
Mm-hmm.
And, they made the mountain shake with laughter as they played. But then they do the demon dance and rushed to Nevermore, threw away the key, and locked the door. So to me, that's kind of like, they, whatever, the demon dance is or whatever. It's kind of like their fall from grace, and they've like doomed themselves and the world,
Just what man does every fucking day. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, you could definitely read that as an environmental song, because like, that's what we're doing. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay. Yeah.
we've taken, a like self-sustaining environment, and we've just been like, but how can we make as much money as possible and like fuck it up?
Look at this beautiful fucking ocean. Oh God, you don't make it even more beautiful. Some fucking oil. Yes.
And
it's like,
it needs an island of plastic.
Beautiful. But only the hard to recycle plastic. None of that good shit.
Yeah, biodegradable. Get the fuck out of here, you liberal. But yeah, so I mean, I think that once again, there's a lot of ways you can read Dio lyrics.
Yeah, I've got a note at the very end here where it's like, overall, it just sounds like this warning song where it's like, we fucked it. It's all fucked. It's gone. It was perfect, and now it's gone. And that's what I've got. It's kind of the last line, that we're all to blame, and just literally, like he says in the last outro, look out. So
yeah,
it's cool.
There, not to go back to the beginning of the song, but there's this one moment that I just wanted to point out that I just love.
Yeah,
and it's that moment when at the end of the intro, so like it opens and it's the acoustic guitar, and he's doing like these very clean, like, vocals.
Yes.
And then he hits the line, reaching for the stars, we blind the sky, and he holds that like, and then like out of nowhere, he just like pushes it like to maximum power and like gets really gritty.
Yeah.
And then he just holds that until like the end again after that solo.
Yeah. It's like I said, he there's so much of a the tone changes, and I love that. It's very much like Dio just makes the singing so interesting, in the sense where it's like you said, it's I don't know what he's going to do with his inflection every time I listen to a song. I was like, what's he going to do with this? And then he just holds it and like does this big like arpeggiated up and down. I'm like, whoa. Like that was crazy.
Yeah.
But
I'm glad that you're seeing like why I love Dio so much. Dude was just like so incredibly talented.
I don't think there's any arguing that. So really a very beautiful song. And again, like you said, this was recorded in 1980, right? There's so many bands like that sound like this, like that came after that. I feel like, and I can definitely see what you mean, where it's like kind of defined 80s heavy metal for a lot of other groups, because it's definitely iconic. So
yeah, and I'm not saying that like nobody agrees with me when I say that, but like I am saying I don't think this album gets the credit it deserves, where like people are like, oh yeah, those early Ozzy albums defined metal, and it's like, yeah, there's portions of metal that those albums absolutely define, and like obviously the entirety of metal owes a lot to those albums,
right?
But when you look at stuff like
this,
like what would be considered kind of mainstream metal in the 80s and like the offshoot of power metal, like I don't think any of that could necessarily exist without like Heaven and Hell and without Dio,
Yeah, no, I get that. It's yeah, so far so good. We're only 2 tracks in. I would say, yeah, that one's one of my favorites. Number 2, Children of the Sea, very good song. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to number 3, Lady Evil. Wow, this one's fun. So I legitimately thought that that my Spotify had fucked up, and it had just switched to Guns N' Roses at first. I was like, what? Then I realized, like, oh no, this is just like a fucking like bluesy ass riff, and it's this very like, I describe it as like dirty kind of sound, where it's just like this really crunchy guitar, and it's just very like very heavy, but like also kind of swingy a little bit. Does that make sense what I'm saying there?
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at when I say, like, a lot of people are like, oh, that's a completely different band, like, Dio era and Ozzy era are just like not even compatible. And it's like, no, they're still cranking out those like big Black Sabbath riffs.
Yeah.
And like this is a perfect example of like
that,
kind of a more old school bluesy Black Sabbath riff.
I was gonna say that riff is so bluesy, and it's such a nice juxtaposition to what I just heard. And I was like, oh wow, this is different than what I just heard. It felt so like somber before. Now my note literally here is, I can see myself in a leather jacket strolling down the street, causing mischief with cigarettes in my mouth and sunglasses on my hair or on my face. And I'm just like, I just want to go like fuck shit up to this song, just like push people and shit.
You just want to be like Lady Evil, just like, oh hell yeah, with my progenitor, I must do her work.
So the song itself, Dio is like growling and like belting at the same time on this one. It's very, like I said, very dirty sounding, and it's very, very fun too. I would describe this whole album as fun, but this one particularly just felt very like whimsy and very like just super over the top, very like fantasy, because like the lyrics alone, there's a place just south of Witch's Valley where they say the wind won't blow, and they only speak in whispers of her name. And then one line, she feeds the darkness right from her hand. And I'm just like, oh shit. Like, it just gives you this like, oh shit, this lady's evil. This lady's fucking awful. And that the chorus is very catchy. One of the catchiest choruses I've ever heard. Really good.
And something that I really like about it is it's like, oh, okay, like she's evil, she's powerful, but it kind of doesn't condemn her for that.
Yeah,
it's kind of just like,
she's the queen of the night. Like, it's like, whoa.
Yeah, She's magical, she's mystical, she's the queen of the night, gonna do it right. She's the queen of sin. Look out, she'll pull you in. Lady Wonder. It's like, holy shit, like Dio's just like, it'd be rad if there's just a badass like witch.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Dio played Elden Ring. It's like, I'm gonna write a song about Ronnie.
Yeah.
Again, another just fun verse. After that, they're really getting into it. Just like super crunchy sounding like guitar and just nice bass. Great lyrics here. Thunder cracks the sky, it makes you bleed. And I was like, oh, that's the most metal fucking thing I've ever heard. Like, that is just a fucking awesome line. So here's the thing. It does another verse just like that, another chorus, and just a really good crescendo of just, again, the bass and guitar trading off kind of lead parts. And some more good lyrics. Never trust your shadow in the dark, I thought was really fun. And me saying this in a very how do I say, a very bland kind of just speaking voice does not do the song justice. It's you cannot help but grit your teeth and start bobbing your head and like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean this is an absolute like headbanger track, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, it's fun. I immediately, I was bobbing my head. I was like, yeah, okay, where's this going? And yeah, it just great song. Just now, meaning, if I'm honest, it just seems kind of like a fun song. Am I wrong on that one?
I mean, that's what I take away from it, is Dio was like, what would be sick if there was a badass witch? And like, it very much just feels like he wanted to tell like a fun fantasy story.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. It feels so like, just immediately when that riff hits, it just feels so like I said, just like, oh shit, I want to go to a bar and smoke some cigarettes and play some pool, and then just like no, like I said, I'm getting emphatic, so I think I'm clipping the audio. But no, this was a good song. I think it had some really good lyrics. It was really, really identifiable, I'll say. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that one. I guess, yeah, not much to say about that one. I guess just a good time there. Unless you have anything you want to add.
No.
All right, so track 4. Heaven and Hell, the title track. Okay. I think it's between. I will say this. This is probably my favorite song on the album. It is fantastic. So,
man, what did I tell you? I was like, I think you're gonna have big reactions to 2 songs, Children of the Sea and Heaven and Hell.
So I'm gonna surprise you. I think there's one more we'll get to that I have a really big reaction to, and I was quite. Why, we'll get to that.
Okay.
So Heaven and Hell, really good intro. Just a really just hard, nice guitar, very like anthemic, like you said, operatic, dramatic. Just very like, I don't even know how to describe it really. It's just this very like looming, just epic kind of a sound to it. And then it does this kind of interesting thing. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I always thought it was so cool how it like opens with the big riff, and once again, like, people don't give this album credit for like the quality of the riffs. Like that to me, that is up there with any Black Sabbath riff
for sure. It's immediately identifiable, and so it does this interesting thing where that really nice motif, it hits you with it. It's like, oh, boom, here's the theme for this song. And I'm like, all right, cool, I'm into this. And then it does this thing where the tempo just slows down. And it's just like, it goes to a really just kind of nice trot. And this is really just nice galloping bass almost. And I was into this. and he's kind of this really slow, calm Dio singing really nice and clear, like, and it's this kind of really nice lyrics, like, sing me a song, you're a singer, do me a wrong, you're a bringer of evil, the devil is never a maker, the less that you give, you're a taker. Okay, and immediately the song title and the theming, I think, is pretty clear. I take that first verse as immediately saying, like, the less that you give. I was going to ask you, is this song kind of a criticism of organized religion?
So I think that is very possible. Dio was born Catholic, and I think, abandoned that when he got older.
Okay.
I will say that this is one song that Dio has said a lot about, because like when he was asked what is his favorite song he ever wrote, he would say Heaven and Hell.
Okay.
And he, like, when asked what it was about specifically, he would say that, like, it's about how, like, there's heaven and hell inside of all of us, and how, like, nobody's good, nobody's evil. Like, we decide what we're gonna do.
Right.
And, like, every day we decide, like, are we gonna, like, do the evil thing, or are we gonna do the right thing,
That's interesting. Because, I will say, like, the way I read into that was, like, the less you give, it's almost like a criticism, like, if you're not fully righteous, then you're evil. If you're not, being perfect, then you're evil. But it's also like, and we'll get to this later in the song, like, it seems to kind of comment, like, to live is not sin, to enjoy the world is not sin. The lover of life is not a sinner. That's one I got marked and highlighted here. Like, I like that. Where it's just saying, like, just because you're here and enjoying your time and being, on earth doesn't make you a sinner if you're not, doing anything wrong. Like, so it's like, it's, so I'll walk through this a little more here. So the thing I love about this song, you have that really nice, clear first verse, and then it goes to the chorus, and it's just a short chorus where he's like, it's on and on and on, heaven and hell. Oh, well, yeah. And it's like, then the verse 2. Now, at this point, and what I love about this song is it's getting stronger. And, like, some more crunchy guitar comes in. He gets a little more emphatic about his singing. Still the same tempo, but he's really starting to get into it. And it's got that commentary of, like, the closer you get to the meaning, the sooner you'll know that you're dreaming. And, so it's on and on and on, heaven and hell. And he has this really nice line, fool, fool. And it's just like, I guess the way I read that is just kind of like criticizing, like, if you're looking too much into it, you're kind of missing the forest through the trees. Like, it's not about classifying it. It's just about doing good or bad things.
Yeah. And I definitely get that too. And I think I definitely see where you're coming from, of, like, a criticism of organized religion.
Yeah.
And, going back to that line, the less that you give, you're a taker.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that could be, like, you could read it as, like, a criticism of somebody, like, oh, they're not giving enough.
Right.
But you could also read it as a criticism of, like, people who feel that way, where it's like, oh, you're not giving enough to the church, you're taking. Like,
right.
What I mean?
If you're not devoting everything to the church, then you're just 100% the other way. And it's like, well, that's not how that works, per se. And to those listening who are religious, I myself am religious, but, there's nothing wrong with religion, in my opinion. It's just, when it comes to organized religion, you can have some bad things happen. So
yeah,
it's one of those things where it's like, it's important to think about things and understand, like, perspective. And I think Dio does a good job in this song about that, where it's so remind me, did Dio write the lyrics to this song, or is this Tony?
No, he wrote all the lyrics.
Okay, yeah. So again, you have that second verse with the chorus, and he starts to say "fool, fool," and then really good ass bass line. Again, I have so many notes in this whole album in the lyrics where I'm just like, okay, cool verse, cool power solo, and then I just have in all caps bass, and I'm just like, oh yeah, good bass.
Tiberi's all about that bass.
God damn it, I am. In ways you won't even know. No. No. So we have, again, really great solo there. And then another verse. And now he's starting to really growl. And it's getting real heavy. And again, this whole song is this just really intense, like, crescendo. Where it's like, I'm going to fucking... It's like he's just getting almost angrier with each verse. And I kind of love that. And it's something I was really like, I'm a sucker for that too. I'm a sucker for good bass, and I'm a sucker for like energy dynamics where it's like, okay, this is building and it's getting me in certain ways. This song really does that. I do want to ask about one of the lyrics here. So, I love I love the 2 lines here. Love can be seen as the answer, but nobody bleeds for the dancer. And maybe I'm not educated. What does that mean? Nobody bleeds for the dancer.
So the way that I've interpreted this is that, so like he talks about, he kind of criticizes power structures like directly in like my favorite part of the song, when he says, they say that life's a carousel spinning fast, you gotta ride it well.
Oh, yeah.
The world is full of kings and queens who blind your eyes and steal your dreams.
I love that.
So I think he's just straight up saying, like, don't be like that. Like, be the kind of person that's compassionate, even for this person who is like, a lot of people would maybe only care about like, oh, okay, they're there to entertain me. They're there to dance. Yeah. Like, that's all they mean to me. And he's like, no, you need to bleed for that person. You need to care about that person.
Gotcha. And that's, again, like, I again, to those listening, this is why we have this podcast, because like we there's so much stuff I would never in my life have been exposed to this. I love this song, and it's so interesting to hear other viewpoints on it, because like I said, I've known Matt for a long time, and there's a lot of ways you can read lyrics, and I think this is a fun investigation of that. I guess my point is, it's just like I'm just how do I say this? I never had the chance to enjoy something like this because I just figured, oh, it's heavy metal. I don't like it. Probably not. But this is showing me really there's some really not only like good lyrics, but just really great musicality in this genre that I was not aware of. Not that I ever thought metal was bad or like technically unimpressive. It's just I never vibed with it. But this is something I can really get into. So going back to the song a little more. So, like you said, it goes from that verse of nobody bleeds for the dancer to a really nice guitar solo. Once more, I just have bass in all caps. No surprise. And then it does a really nice guitar solo for about a minute. Which again, Tony Iommi is just stellar as well. And again, the drummer, fantastic. I will say, I am guilty of not paying as much attention to the drums as I should, but he's also very skilled. I just want to make that very clear. Should not be overlooked. But
yeah, like I said, they're, to me, a very technically impressive band. Before we started recording this, I was watching the music videos from this album.
Yeah.
And it was just like so impressive. Like they were just all absolutely getting down. And it's always so funny to see Dio perform, because the music videos are like just live recordings that they've dubbed the
track.
The track over. And it's so funny to see Dio like perform live, because he's constantly like, well, first off, he would wear these like really kind of ridiculous like fantasy outfits. Yeah. So in these videos, he's wearing this shirt that has like these massive sleeves that just like hang down to the ground. And he's just like constantly like spreading his arms wide and like doing like like flipping the microphone stand around and just absolutely belting it out. And like everybody's around them just like shredding. And then it'll like show, Bill Ward just like absolutely just pounding on those drums. And I was just like, God, like these guys are just so good. Like I forget how impressive they are musically,
Yeah, no, they're great. And going off of that point, so again, this is going in that theme of the building of the crescendo. That's that really great, just kind of solo. Then it just fucking gets faster. Tempo up changes, just starts chugging. Guitar solo leads into that next verse, and it's like it's the fastest the song is, and it's the loudest the song is, and he's just belting about, like I said, the life is a carousel, spinning fast, gotta ride it well. That whole line is in there. And like you said, it's a direct, obvious commentary on like power, where it's like kings and queens blind you, steal your dreams. They'll tell you the moon is really white, that the moon is just the sun at night. And when you walk in golden halls, you get to keep the gold that falls. And that's just such a nice... It's so cliche, but it's also just like in this song, with the power of that music at this point and in the speed it's at, it's just like, yeah, just hit me with some fucking obvious cliches. It hits that much harder.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I think, like I said, the tempo change there is one of the strongest parts of this album, like in a song. And then it keeps going. It ends with him just repeating the word fool. And then there's this, I literally have as my note, high ass energy, pumping, sick solo. And then that's just my note for the end of the song. And then it says, fades into a really nice medieval. So yeah, it fades out, and there's just this like mandolin or guitar. I'm not sure which, it's a 12 string or what it is, but it's this really sad, kind of somber sounding, like just solo. It's silent otherwise. It's just really nice guitar playing, and it's this very sadness of a vibe compared to what I felt was kind of anger building up until that point. And it's like it felt very cool because it was like, I definitely know what it's like to get angry and then just kind of hit that kind of high of like, all right, I got it out. Like I was able to vent, and now it's just kind of time to reflect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's almost like you're left with like, okay, there are all these problems, and then you're kind of like, but what can I even do about it?
Right,
you know what I mean? And you're just like left with this little quiet, acoustic guitar solo that's just kind of like slowly fades out, and it's just like almost like, do you give up? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So definitely, I think top contender for one of my favorite songs. So yeah, that's Heaven and Hell, the title track. We are halfway through this.
Like favorite song period or favorite song on the album?
Oh, favorite song on the album. I don't know if I can go that far, but it is fantastic.
Yeah, I was about to be like, damn.
It is fantastic. Definitely the best Black Sabbath song I think I've heard. I get why Dio was proud of it. I'll say that.
Yeah. I will say, just for the record, that if asked what my favorite song is, this is my go-to of like,
really?
Heaven and Hell by Black Sabbath. Yeah, because, and like, I get that, that can kind of change day to day. Like, some days you're just like, oh god, this one song by this one band is just so good. But like, it's like, my kind of canned answer if somebody asks me what my favorite song is, like, that has been my favorite song for the longest amount of time. Heaven and Hell, all the way.
Well, I'm very glad to have heard it, and that's great to know. Actually, that's what I say. Good choice. Damn. Very good choice. Yeah. So I'm starting. It was at this point because I was like, okay, I really like the first three songs. I like Children of the Sea. I thought it was a great song. I thought Lady Evil was fun. This one hit me, and I was like, oh shit, no, this is like genre defining. Like, this is why this genre even exists in the first place. So I think, yeah, very fair opinion to have. So okay, moving on to song 5. I will say a bit different. Wishing Well is the name of this song. So strong start. So this is a very playful song. I honestly, it's kind of got this like almost like a punk feel to it. This is really just kind of laid back, kind of upbeat song. It's kind of sung from the perspective of like this like wishing well, where it's like throw me a penny and I'll make you a dream. And it's just this really, like I said, very upbeat song, where Dio is just extremely like, I guess I'd just say the word playful. That's what it felt to me, this whole song. I do love the chorus on this. It's got a nice melody to it. The I'll give you a star so you know just where you are portion. I thought that was a really nice tune there.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, this is probably one of my lesser favorites on the album. But I really enjoyed it still. Like I said, the whole thing is just kind of like this song from the perspective of a well, kind of like saying like, I could be your wishing well, like, you know, give your love to me, give your attention to me, and I can be here for you to catch your tears. And that's kind of a fun, like, again, very whimsy thing. But, you know, I guess I'm struggling on this one to kind of get the meaning a little bit.
Yeah, so what I get out of it, and like, first off, I want to agree, it's definitely not one of my favorites off the album. I still really like it,
Yeah.
and it's not my least favorite off the album. I think that, like, I have a feeling that we might have the same least favorite, but I don't know that. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe you're going to love the one that I'm like, I could kind of take it or leave it. But as far as the meaning, what I get out of it is like, yeah, obviously there's this motif of like a wishing well. But to me, it's kind of about like the power and the danger of belief. Because, you know, look in the water, tell me, what do you see? Reflections of the love you give to me. So it's like,
yeah, and no, that's a good thought process, because the next line is, love isn't money, it's not something you buy. So again, it's like kind of maybe another organized religion comment, like, you know, paying money doesn't make, you know, your God love you more. It's not about that.
And you know, this one I don't get as much like organized religion or like power structures out of it.
Yeah.
Like it's literally just, to me, about someone who's like putting all of this belief into a wishing well.
Yeah.
And like it means something to them, but only because of what they've put into it.
Okay.
Like it's just a well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like it means a lot to them because they've like, you know, put their tears and their money and just like their belief into it. So it's kind of about like the power of that, but like I said, kind of the danger, because like, you know, it's like throw me a penny and I'll make you a dream, but it's like, you know, that's not how the world works. So like you can believe it, and maybe for some people they get by on that belief, but other people are like, well, why am I not getting these results? You know what I mean?
I get that. Yeah, it's like I said, definitely. I thought maybe it was like even a love song. I was struggling. I was like, is this a love song? Because it's like, someday you'll feel the things I say. And I'm like, I couldn't quite place it. Not to say it's a bad song, but I like you said too, it's definitely probably one of the weaker ones on the album for me. But I thought it was fun. I thought it was playful. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have much to say about that one. You got anything else interesting about this?
No, I think that's kind of all I want to say about it. Like I said, and just another line that kind of does reiterate, you know, maybe kind of what I was saying is, you know, it says, you find that life's not always what it seems. So it's like, okay, you believe this, but maybe it's not true.
Right.
And then it just says, you know, dream for a while of the things that make you smile. And to me, he's just kind of saying like, look, if you want to put your belief into this wishing well and it makes you happy, do it.
Yeah. It doesn't hurt anybody.
But if you think that it's going to solve all your problems, like that's not going to happen. Like you also need to live your life, you know.
I think that's an interesting interpretation. Yeah, I like that. Huh.
But yeah, that's really all I have to say about it. Like you said, it's I mean, I still think it's a really good song, but like compared to like the highlights, it's kind of like not as good.
Yeah, again, like the worst of the best is still pretty good. So, I don't
Yeah.
think it's the worst on the album. But but still, yeah, not my favorite. But hey, it was fun. Number 6, Die Young. So this was an interesting one. It starts off with this really relaxing synth and guitar, very like airy sounding, just very chill. And then about 30 seconds in, just fucking wham! This is giant like hit of just fucking drums and guitar. It just fucking goes with a sick ass solo. I mean, it kind of floored me. I was like, what the fuck? I was not expecting that. And so this song does this. It has a similar theme to what Heaven and Hell does, and something I absolutely love, where it just fucking builds. I love this song. I don't know how you feel about it. This was one of my favorites for sure on this album.
Yeah, I mean, I really like this one a lot. I think that the just like that wall of sound that you hit out of nowhere, combined with Dio's performance on it, where he's just belting it out, just like, gather the wind, though the wind won't help you fly at all. Like, I mean, it's just like so good. Like,
yeah, and like you said, the lyrics are gather the wind, although it won't help you fly at all. And he says, chain the sun as it tears away to face you as you run. That shit's, again, like I said, he has such a vivid, descriptive lyric. I think it is masterful in that. Right? This is like so vivid in my brain when I heard this, and I was like, oh god, I can visualize what the hell's going on here, and it's like very, very cool. But I do love in the second verse there. It says life's fantasy to be locked away and still to think you're free, we're free. And it's like, hey, yeah, sometimes you should take a step back and say, what autonomy do I really have in this world? And say to yourself, like, isn't it kind of sad that true freedom is kind of hard to get? You know what I mean?
I mean, if not impossible,
yes.
Especially in kind of the world that we've built. But yeah, like that's one of my favorite lines in the album. Like, I love that so much. And I think it's so true that like, people who truly believe like that they're free and maybe don't question the ways in which they're not,
listen,
really do seem to be happier. You know what I mean?
We live in America. We are free, damn it.
Yeah. Yeah, Dio was just like tearing down the establishment before it was cool here,
Yeah, no, I mean, again, it's one of those things like Heaven and Hell does, where it's a very cliche thing, but honestly, what's wrong with being cliche? And I think, again, just remind yourself, like, do what matters to you and try to take as much control of your own life, without hurting anybody, of course, as you can to be happy. And don't be blind to that. If you want to do something for yourself, do something for yourself. As long as it doesn't hurt anybody else, hey, it's okay. And a caveat: I am not a life therapist. I'm not a life coach. Don't take anything I say to heart. It's gonna be bad advice. So whoever's listening, if it's just anybody besides us as we edit this, do not listen to anything we say as life advice. There are professionals out there who will help you. Therapy is a good thing. Back to the song. So, again, right after that line, so live for today. Tomorrow never comes. Yeah, just enjoy your fucking life, because every day is a beautiful thing. And it pauses into this chill acoustic breakdown at that point. It's kind of sad almost. And die young, can't you see the writing in the air is the next line there. And I have a note there. I just went, I don't know why, but I like this. This is a really nice line to me. I'm not sure what he's alluding to there when he says die young, but again, it was a nice little reprieve after that high energy section. And he repeats that. He says, die young, gonna die young. Someone stopped the fall. And then he holds the fall. He holds that word, fall. And then once again, it just it just revamps into this holy shit solo. It's another it's almost like just like, yeah, Dio's coming back for another verse. Get the fuck ready. And then once again, it repeats the same verse from the first part of the song. But the guitar and the bass of this are just fucking going now. And it's like, I have a note here. This song just makes me want to fucking run. Like, it is just really good. Just really good energy, really upbeat. It's just a really, really good song. I mean, he just finishes and he just repeats the phrase, die young. He sings it. And then the solo hits critical mass at this point, and it just goes hard as shit. This is one of my favorite songs, because the solo at the end of this actually kind of gave me some chills, because I was just like, wow, the energy here is just like so like good. So yeah, I really thought it was a good song. As you can tell, like I said, similar to Heaven and Hell, track 4, really captures that kind of like energy build, but it's not too much. That's why I like it. It's a nice energy on this. So yeah, really good. But yeah, I mean, as far as meaning overall, I think we covered enjoy every day of your life as much as you can, as long as you're not hurting others. I think that's nice.
And I think this is one of those times where he kind of just says what he means.
Yeah.
He's just like, tomorrow never comes. Like, it's not guaranteed. Like, do what you want to do today,
Mm-hmm. 100%. So, yeah, I guess I'll move on to number 7. I think, so, number 7, seems so. Once again, I thought this was a Queen song when I turned it on. It felt very Queen to me. I don't know. I think it was just that, like, even his voice was very Freddie Mercury in this part, and I was like, what the hell? Like, and I'm sure they influenced each other. Like, I'm sure they were both around and in prominence at that point. But I think, I think this is a pretty straightforward song. Walk Away, track 7. From what I understand, it's just kind of... Is this a song just about, like, turning away from, like, sex?
I mean, I think that's kind of the obvious, like... And I don't think it's, like, turn away from sex altogether. I think it is, like...
Meaningless sex, turn away from, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's maybe just be responsible, because it's just like, there's the part where he's like, but I can see right through it all. It's a way to have a child.
Yes.
So he's just kind of like, maybe think about the, responsibilities that come with, come with sex and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And, this song is very straightforward, and like I think it's musically not nearly as interesting as a lot of the other songs, and like it's not that it's bad, but I do think this is my least favorite of the album.
Really? Yeah. I think this is probably, I'll be honest, it's either this one or the next one, or it's my least favorite.
Really?
Yes. I was, not that I have a problem with the last one, but we'll get to that. So I'm like you. This felt like pretty standard as far as like, good. It was good. It had a pretty obvious theme to it, where it's just like, like, you said, you can see through it all. It's a way to have a child. Just turn your head and walk away. And I have a note there. very Boston in that line, very Queen. Again, got that vibe, and I'm sure they all had influences on each other.
And I can definitely see that even with the it's like, oh,
yes,
oh,
that was
that is very kind of 70s rock, isn't it?
Yes, that's exactly the point where I have that actually right after the first one of those. And there's some good like a star in the midnight sky burns before it falls. But it's like, I can't see her fire, but I can feel her heat all right. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. They all do well. It's not like it's a bad song. They're all musically good. It just was, comparatively speaking, one of the more uninteresting ones. I think, speaking it out loud, this one is probably also my least favorite. Simply because...
Yeah.
But 8 was not very high up for me either, and we're about to get into that one. So,
see, I'm kind of surprised by that, because I think that one is really good. And well, we'll talk about it in a minute. Did you have anything else you want to say about Walk Away? It's kind of one of those that it's hard to even talk about, because it's just kind of uninteresting.
Yeah, and again, it's just you have an album of 8 songs. Not all of them are going to be heaven and hell. So it's fine. I have no problem with it, but it's fine. I'll say that. And then, I guess, moving on to our finale track, Lonely is the Word. Great title. I like that title. And I do like the lyrics to this song. I think ultimately, I don't know, just musically it didn't hit me in the same way a lot of the other ones did. I thought it was, again, good. But definitely slower, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I do think it's weird, because this song has such strong lyrics, but then the second half of the song is just a lot of soloing. You know what I mean?
See, and that's kind of why I like it. Tony Iommi has gone on record saying that this song has his favorite guitar solos he's ever performed.
Oh, and to be clear, they are stellar. I'm not saying that they're bad, but I just think that I don't know. Like I said, just something about this one didn't hit me in the same way. I'm not sure really what it was. I liked it. It's still good. And I do. This is one I struggled to find meaning for. And there is a line in this song called "Lonely is the Word. Gotta be the saddest sound I ever heard." Where it's just like, yeah, if someone says they're lonely, yeah, that is extremely sad. I mean, to come to that point and say that, it's like, it's just sad as a concept. So I don't know if that's all there is to take from it, or if I'm not seeing something. I was a little confused with the passing to the backside of the moon, joining the traveler, all those lyrics. It was, I struggled to find an overall kind of feeling on this. I think it was because it was in two halves like that, and they felt kind of separate almost. Is that fair of me to say, you think?
Yeah, and I think the lyrics early on I like the lyrics throughout, because it is kind of a simple, it's okay, it's about being lonely or whatever, but it's also about to me, it's about this, interstellar being that's leading you through the experience of loneliness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was having a hard time, because I was starting to think that way, and I was like, is this a fantasy song? Kind of like Lady Evil almost? I'm like, I don't know. I couldn't quite place it.
That's what I get out of it, because it's
in that aspect, I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, it's a long way to nowhere, and I'm leaving very soon. On the way, we pass so close to the backside of the moon. Mm-hmm. Hey, join the traveler. If you've got nowhere to go, hang your head and take my hand. It's the only road I know. So, kind of, I think the lyrics aren't as strong as in others, mm-hmm. but I like the concept of, this kind of fantasy song of, this, like I said, an interstellar being that's okay, I'm gonna lead you through this. So I think that's cool. But to me, the highlights of this song are definitely the solos. Like, I think that
Yes.
musically, it's kind of a highlight for me of the album.
Okay, now with that in mind, I can agree to that, because if I look at just the solos, yeah, they're great. They're badass. Overall, in the scheme of the song, like I said, they almost felt like two separate ones. Maybe that's just me being too critical, but I do think the solo also is kind of, I will say this, I have a note, like the solo almost is the form of speaking about this, is kind of what I put here.
Yeah.
I could see that maybe being the intent on that. And in a way, that's really nice. I really like that. But I do like the verse here where it's like, I've been higher than stardust. I've been seen upon the sun. I used to count in millions then, but now I only count in one. And it's like, yeah, it's... Is it from the star's perspective? Is it like this? You said the celestial being, and there's interesting. I think this song is interesting. It didn't just grip me. Is the way I would describe that. Is that fair?
Yeah. No. I mean, hey, however you feel about it is fair. I had two things. First, I was gonna say the solos are kind of, to me, like, the home base is that bass line that plays throughout it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, talking throughout this album, I was like, oh, he's gonna love that part, because like the bass is like so heavy, and like
It is very good.
the solos are like going crazy, and then there's like that cool bass line that's just like your bass, just like literally your bass line of like, oh, okay, this is gonna get me through it.
Yeah,
And
that's a good point. Or yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah, I like how you said that.
And just the lyrics that you were talking about, where it's like, I used to be seen upon the sun. That almost makes me think that like this story is about like maybe something or that was like worshipped as a god, and it no longer is. So now it's just like the god of the lonely, almost.
Yeah, like
because
the
it itself is like so lonely now. Yeah.
That's an interesting thought. Like I said, overall, I found it interesting, but I wasn't excited about it. So, yeah, I mean, again, like everything else, not bad, but definitely interesting. So yeah, that about does it for me. You have anything else on number 8 there?
No. I mean, I think it is interesting to kind of leave on that note, where it's like the closest thing to a ballad we really get on this album. And it is kind of strange that like it's such a high energy album that it leaves off on kind of this quieter note that does have this like bombastic solo in it, but still it's like bookended by, probably the lowest energy, like most understated song on the album.
Yes.
So yeah, that is kind of strange, especially when you think about the shape of albums. And so like from a technical perspective, it makes sense why they would finish with this one.
Yes.
Because like, I've probably explained this to you, and you've probably just heard it, before, but like albums tend to end on ballads because the outside of the record is the part that you would handle, so it would get scratches on it. So you open with the big loud song, and then that like is going to cover up the scratches, and then you end on the quiet song that isn't going to be
it's got
like scratched up.
It's got the highest integrity because it's in the center of the vinyl.
Yeah, so like
interesting. I never knew this.
Yeah, so that's probably why they end on it, and I think a lot of the time that can really work. But where it does feel a little out of place, it is kind of weird to leave us there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think this album is so interesting because it's got such good ass like variety. Like you've got Neon Nights, which feels just very like you said, Iron Maiden-y. You've got like Children of the Sea, very calm. But then you've got fun ones like Lady Evil. And then just the fucking epic that is Heaven and Hell. Like there's so much variety on this album, and I think that's why I like it, because you never want songs to sound the same, and none of these songs do. They're all unique, and I like that. And aside from number 7, I really enjoy all of them. So
That's definitely how I feel. Like, it's not that I dislike Walk Away, but like, if any other song, if it was taken out, I would be like, oh, like, this is not a whole album anymore. If Walk Away was removed, I would be like, yeah, I don't really miss it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. Number 8 has some redeeming qualities, even if it wasn't my favorite. It's still good. But yeah, number 7, I'm like you. I could take or leave. It's fine, but yeah. Sorry, Dio.
Yeah, it is. I just want to point out it's deeply funny that album is like 40 minutes long, and we are 2 hours and 20 minutes in.
Hey, you know what? Don't break the fourth wall like this with people listening. Maybe. But
hey, we can cut it.
This is fair. But yeah, man, thank you very much for showing me this. I really had a fun time, truthfully. I can tell you, I listened to this week, and I was sitting up here, and I was just jamming out the whole time. I was like I said, there's some parts where my facial expressions, I think, would have been enough to give the exact 2-hour recording we just did here. This because I think every song has such a unique vibe. But again, truly eye-opening for me in terms of like what heavy metal is, because I would never have thought, when you said this was heavy metal in the first half, I was like, this is heavy metal? How is this heavy metal? And I was like, oh, well, okay, I can, if that's what heavy metal is, there's probably other things out there I'll like, or maybe it's just fucking Dio, because Dio is fucking amazing. But
yeah, well, I mean, there is still, like, when people say heavy metal, it kind of can mean a lot of things now.
Yeah.
Whereas, and I mean, even at the time, it kind of could mean a lot of things, but, there wasn't, like, when this came out, there wasn't, like, death metal, there wasn't black metal, like, you know what I mean? So there wasn't this stuff that did have, like, the growling and shrieking vocals that I think, when people think of metal now, they think of, like, some of the more extreme forms of it.
Oh, yeah.
They don't think of, like, the earlier stuff or the stuff that does kind of stick to the, like, earlier kind of rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the same as, like, alt rock. Like, what does that really mean?
Yes. And, like, I'm glad that there is, and I think that there is still, like, a lot of connective tissue between, like, something like Heaven and Hell and something that would be labeled heavy metal that might be, heavier or like, just be very different. Like, there's still a lot of like connection there. But yeah, it's interesting to show something like this to somebody and be like, this is, kind of the roots. Like, this is where it comes from. And like, I think that like black metal can be deeply beautiful. But I also understand that, like, not everybody's going to feel that way. Like, some people can't get past the vocals or, like, the production.
Sure.
But like, something like this, I think, obviously, like, a mainstream audience did really like it. It was a really popular album. It's actually their 3rd most popular album.
That does not...
Behind
which one?
Yeah, behind... Oh, no, just behind, like, 2 of the Ozzy albums that are considered, like, absolute classics. Like, this beats out some of the Ozzy albums that people are like, oh, this is an amazing album. So, like, it was really big when it came out. Like, it's a platinum album,
Yeah, I mean, for good reason, too. I will swear by it. You told me about Dio when we were in high school, and, man, like, he has lived up to his name. He has lived up to everything I've ever heard about him thus far, and his time with Black Sabbath, from what this album has showed me, is no exception. So yeah, I think for what this was, I was very pleasantly surprised. I was expecting a lot more of that Ozzy sound from what you've told me, and kind of the more doom metal vibe. But no, I was hit with quite a nice variety. Really enjoyed 87.5% of it. So it's really, really good. So 2 thumbs up from me. So as a reminder, this is Dissimilar Interests is the name of our podcast. But thus far, so so good.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to get into stuff that, like, I picked this one because I was like, okay, this is an album that means a lot to me and I love a lot, and like I've listened to for a huge portion of my life. But I also picked it because I was like, this is kind of a gentle landing. Like, I think that there's a good chance that Tiberi will like it. And it's just like a really good album, and it's not kind of an acquired taste how like some of the stuff I'm going to show you is, know?
Right. No, and I'm sure this can be the same with some of my stuff. So, I mean, and as a reminder on this kind of format we're doing here, we're going to be kind of sharing music like we have today, the albums. I think we've also discussed, if an album in its entirety is maybe not the full scope or kind of the selective scope we want to share, we have agreed, hey, if there's an artist that just, has a vibe or has a history or an impact on a genre, I think we're going to do some playlists, some custom playlists, and just kind of share them and kind of go over song by song over various albums. But I do think something like this, and even something I may have on my kind of list, it definitely works as a standalone album. I think this is a very good look at a very hyper specific part of Black Sabbath that I did not know existed. So I think it's interesting.
Well, hey, I'm really glad that you liked it. I thought that at the very least, I was like, he's got to like some of like these like Heaven and Hell tracks, like the title track, or Children of the Sea, like some of just the standouts.
Motherfucker.
But I'm really glad that like you liked like Lady Evil and stuff like that. That I kind of wasn't sure if you would.
So Lady Evil, I did not like the first time I heard it. I will be very clear on that. I actually liked it I listened to it a couple times after my first listen, and it grew on me pretty quick. And I was like, this is actually real fun. And I'm glad I gave it another chance because it was it turned out to be one of my favorites. So
yeah.
But yeah, man, I think that I think we're at the end of our first episode, unless you have anything else to add.
No, my only question is, what am I going to be, reading / watching / listening to for next week's episode?
Oh boy, I've been debating on this. So, this is our first in episode kind of reveal of this. You told me to listen to this album off the mic, so to speak, and I had some time to prepare around that. So now I have to just throw this on the podcast here, and hopefully you've never seen it. So, as a reminder, back to the beginning of this podcast a couple hours ago, we are going to be sharing, like Matt said, books, TV, movies, albums, music, basically just some of our favorite medias from our two differing, sets of interest historically. So, I think for my first delving into this, I'm going to show you a movie. Now, I'll ask you, let's have some fun with this. What do you think I'm going to show you?
So I have a sneaking suspicion that it's going to be anime related, and I think that it's going to be Studio Ghibli related.
Ooh. Ooh.
I definitely could be wrong, but that has been my guess. And I have something to say if that is the direction that you're going.
Oh, no. Go ahead and, I'll tell you, you're wrong. We're not going that way this week. But what is your comment on that? Is it relevant to the future episodes?
No, I was just going to say that like a local kind of like boutique movie theater is doing like a Studio Ghibli festival. So I was like, if it is Studio Ghibli, I could go see it in theaters.
Oh.
But that is completely fine. I am open to do whatever. I just, you've been saying movies, and I kind of assumed that we were going to start with anime. And as I understand it, that is kind of like where a lot of people start with anime.
So yeah, you are correct. That is something I have highly considered. Now, for those who don't, obviously you guys don't know us if you're listening. I enjoy quite a bit of anime. I definitely will say there are plenty of bad anime out there as of today, both in movie and TV form. But alas, we are not doing anime this week, Matt. I've got a very heavy-hitting anime movie that fucked me up big time. And I don't think we're going to watch that one on the first thing I have you watch.
Okay.
But we are watching a movie. So on this, are you familiar with a little movie called, well, I mentioned it yesterday. Are you familiar with Martin Scorsese's full filmography?
So, I mean, I'm familiar with Martin Scorsese. I have not seen all of his movies, but what I've seen, I've liked.
Have you seen the movie Silence?
I have not.
Oh,
like I was saying, we had a little brief conversation yesterday, and I think what I've seen is like Casino, Goodfellas, and that other one that we talked about that I can't remember the name of. But no, it's called Silence.
Silence. So Silence here is a film that stars Andrew Garfield, Adam Driver, and Liam Neeson. Great actors, great names. And it is a movie that was, I will say this, haunting. Haunting is the word I would describe. It is, I thoroughly, clip the microphone, look at that. Look at us being professionals. I would say one of my favorite movies. Quite nice. So.
Is this the one, I remember seeing trailers, is this the one where they're like Christian missionaries in like Japan or something?
That is correct. So I believe they're Spanish missionaries that are sent to Japan to convert people to the faith. Yeah, so the whole movie, the plot of the movie is that, these missionaries are sent over to Japan in a time where Japan is very devoutly anti-Christian and anti-religious other than their own governmental sanctioned belief systems. So,
okay.
Now, this is a very, very good movie to talk about, I think. I'm excited to hear your opinions because I think this has challenged a lot of people. Let me put it this way. In a lot of ways. So, I will leave it at that. Your homework is to watch Silence, the 2016 film.
Okay.
And see what you think of Mr. Scorsese's director work on this.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch that and see how it handles like the missionary work and like the implications of that, because I think especially more recently a lot of people have been having like some kind of hard conversations about like what that work accomplishes, right, and like maybe the price. So yeah, I'm excited to see like what direction it goes.
Yeah, and I think that this is going to be, I want to hear your opinions because my wife and I watched this and we had the same opinion, and it was particularly, I want to see if there's one scene that really hits you the way it hit us. It's it's something. I'll say that. I won't give you any more details. But go watch it. We'll come back next week. We'll discuss it. Again, thank you so much for sharing this. This has been a wonderful time. I mean, honestly, fun to do a podcast. Never done this before. And if anybody's listening, thank you for listening all the way through this. Or if you skipped to the end, anyway, thank you. Again, this is Best Friends Dissimilar Interests. And we hope to keep doing this for a while. So hopefully we can keep this going, and hopefully it doesn't sound like complete fucking garbage on your end. Because I've clipped the microphone probably 25 times throughout this recording. But no, thank you guys for listening. If you have, thank you, Matt, for sharing. Is there anything else you want to say?
No. Like you said, if anyone's listening to this, thank you so much. Feel free to leave us a review on whatever, site or app you listen to us on, if that is an option. I know that reviews on Apple Podcasts are a really big deal. So I would be really excited to
Sure.
get some feedback and see what people are thinking.
Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are. Yeah, any kind of interaction, we would love to hear from you. So thank you all again. And we hope sometime soon here to kind of set up an email. If you guys ever want to chat, we can always discuss opinions, or you can tell us if we're fucking wrong about anything, because I guarantee I will be. I
already know one thing I was wrong about this episode.
Oh, well, we'll leave that to the listeners. It'll be a fun game for them. 500 points to whoever can figure out where the fuck Matt fucked up, because I don't know. but no. This has been fun. Thank you guys. Thank you, Matt. And I'm Tiberi.
And I'm Matt, and this was Best Friends to Similar Interests. Thank you so much.
See you guys next week. Later.
This is Editing Matt. I just wanted to hop in and say that we have created an email now. It is bestfriendstosimilarinterests@gmail.com. Go ahead and shoot us an email if you have any questions, concerns, or suggestions. Thanks.